To say that the Adamic language was the first language spoken by mortals, as Elder McConkie phrased it, is an empty claim. He was the first mortal man, and whatever language he spoke by definition was the first language spoken by a mortal. Such a claim does not say anything about the language itself. The idea that the Adamic language originated and was used in the Garden of Eden does not provide any further light on the nature of the language itself. Underlying the issue of identifying the Adamic language are several fundamental problems. First, as Elder McConkie pointed out, but is obvious to all, the Adamic language no longer exists. No one speaks it, and there are no written records in the language. Second, there are no reliable records describing the language in any specificity. Some few words have survived, which will be discussed later, but there is nothing in the scriptural record that provides anything explicit and definitive about the nature of the language. This vacuum of reliable information on the Adamic language is precisely what has given rise to the multitude of conjectures in the first place. Compounding the problem is the nature of the Genesis accounts of the creation and Garden of Eden. How are they to be interpreted? Are the accounts literal and accurate descriptions of historical events as some believe them to be? Or are they symbolic, which has also been argued? If the accounts are literal, then some questions can be answered unequivocally. For example, immediately after God created man and woman in His own image, He blessed them and gave them commandments. Adam and Eve immediately understood what God was saying. There was no learning process, and the record does not indicate that God had to teach them language. Adam and Eve's understanding of language was apparently innate, existing at their very creation. Elder Joseph Fielding Smith's belief that Adam learned language from the best teacher man ever had is not supported by a literal interpretation of Genesis. Moreover, the language used by God and Adam and Eve is Hebrew. This lends credence to the claim that the first language and the language of heaven was Hebrew. Any claim that Adamic is other than Hebrew is not supported by the Genesis accounts and can only be assumed. Some will argue that the reason that God and Adam and Eve speak Hebrew is due to the fact that the account was written by speakers of Hebrew. Moses is the traditional author of Genesis, though some scholars believe the book to be a later product. This argument has merit. Joseph Smith, after all, recorded a portion of the same record in his native tongue, English. The Hebrew of Genesis, like the English of the Book of Moses, cannot be considered the actual reported speech of God, Adam, or Eve. But if we cannot take everything in Genesis at face value, then the vacuum of any certain information on the Adamic language remains. A symbolic approach to the creation and garden accounts fundamentally changes any basis for understanding the original language of man. Statements of fact now become interpretive. What represented itself now represents something else. A case in point is the creation of Adam. According to the Genesis account, Adam was created by God out of the dust. This new being, fully formed as an adult, was immediately capable of understanding and speaking a language. But if this is not a literal explanation of the creation of Adam, and the subsequent communications are merely representative, then the reality behind both creation and language must be something else entirely.